Act as if nothing bothers you. It sounds fake, doesn't it? Like pretending, like putting on a mask. But what if I told you that this is one of the most powerful Stoic practices there is? Not because you're pretending to be strong, but because you're training yourself to become unshakable. Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a room and you could just feel the tension? Maybe someone looked at you a certain way. Maybe someone said something passive-aggressive or didn't say anything at all. And instantly, your body reacted. Your mind went into defense mode. Your peace disappeared in less than 5 seconds. Now imagine this. What if you could walk into that same room, hear the same words, see the same looks, and still feel completely grounded? What if instead of reacting, you simply breathed, smiled gently, and stayed still inside? That's not acting, that's mastery. Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That's it? That's the practice. You decide the kind of person you want to be. And then you act like it, long before the world gives you permission to. You act calm before you feel calm. You act clear before the fog clears. You act unbothered. Not because you're denying reality, but because you're choosing not to be defined by it. That's the power of Stoicism. It doesn't ask you to fake anything. It asks you to step into your highest self before you fully believe you are that person. Because here's the secret. You become what you repeatedly practice. You want to be resilient? Practice composure. You want to be mentally strong? Practice stillness. You want peace? Then practice being the person who doesn't give it away so easily. Act as if nothing bothers you. And eventually, nothing will. This episode is not just about faking it till you make it. It's about embodying strength until it becomes real. So let's walk through this together. I'm going to share with you not just why Stoics stayed calm under pressure, but how you can train yourself to do the same, starting right now. Let's begin, because the real battlefield isn't out there. It's in here. It's in your mind, in the way you perceive what happens to you. Epictetus didn't promise comfort. He didn't say the world will be fair or gentle or predictable. He said something far more radical. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the view they take of them. And that single line has the power to change your life. Let me paint you a picture. You walk into a room, people are whispering. One of them glances at you and laughs. What do? Your mind immediately starts building a story. They're talking about me. They don't like me. I must look ridiculous. Your body follows that story. Heart rate rises, stomach tightens, mood drops. But pause. What if the story isn't true? What if they were laughing at a meme? What if that glance had nothing to do with you? What if the only thing hurting you is the meaning you attached? That's perception, and it's everything. The Stoics understood this deeply. They weren't concerned with what happened. They were concerned with how the mind processed what happened. Because when something bothers you, it's not the thing itself that holds the power. It's your interpretation of it. And the most dangerous thing about interpretations is that they usually go unchallenged. You don't question them. You don't slow down and ask, is this real or just the story I'm telling myself? And so you suffer, not because of reality, but because of a thought dressed up as truth. I want you to take a moment. Think about something that's been bothering you lately. Not something massive, just one of those little things that lingers. Maybe someone didn't respond to your message. Maybe a coworker was cold to you. Maybe you made a small mistake, and your mind keeps replaying it. Now ask yourself, what's the story I've told myself about this? Is that story helpful, or is it making me miserable? That one pause, that moment of metacognition, thinking about your own thinking, is where Stoicism begins. It doesn't ask you to ignore your feelings. It asks you to trace them back to the thought that created them. And once you find that thought, you get to decide, do I still want to keep this story? That's where freedom starts. Let me share something personal. There was a time when I let everything get to me. A late reply, a bad look, a critical comment. I took it all personally, and every time I'd spiral. What did I do wrong? Why don't they like me? I'm not good enough. But over time, I learned. It wasn't the world that was hurting me. It was my interpretation of the world. It was me. And when I stopped automatically believing every thought that passed through my mind, I started reclaiming my peace. So when Epictetus says, act as if nothing bothers you, he doesn't mean be numb. He means be awake. Be so clear in your perception that you stop bleeding from imaginary wounds. Because sometimes the pain you feel isn't even yours. It's a reaction to a story someone else planted in your mind years ago. It's time to let that go. And from here, once you begin to notice how perception shapes your world, you'll naturally start asking, okay, then what can I control? That's the next piece of this puzzle. Because no matter how calm your perception gets, life will still throw curveballs. So how do you stay grounded? Let's talk about the only thing Stoics believe you ever truly control, and why that's more than enough. So once you begin to notice how much your perception shapes your pain, the next question becomes, what can I actually control? Because no matter how sharp your thinking is, no matter how calm your energy becomes, life will still test you. People will still misunderstand you. Traffic will still be slow. Your plans will still fall through. Loved ones will still disappoint you. And some days, your own mind will feel like your worst enemy. So how do you stay centered when the world keeps spinning sideways? The Stoics had an answer, and it's one of the most liberating ideas you'll ever learn. There are only two types of things in life: things you control and things you don't. Epictetus. It sounds simple, but most people live their whole lives getting this backwards. We waste time and energy trying to change things that aren't ours to change. We try to control other people's opinions. We obsess over outcomes. We replay conversations we can't undo. We fear futures that haven't even happened, and in doing so, we give away our peace, voluntarily. Let me break it down like this. You can't control how someone else talks to you, but you can control how you respond. You can't control if you get the job, but you can control how you show up in the interview. You can't control if your partner truly understands you, but you can control how honestly you express yourself. You can't control the storm, but you can control your posture in the rain. And that's where your power lives. Trying to control what you can't is the root of most suffering. Let me repeat that. Trying to control what you can't is the root of most suffering. It breeds anxiety. It breeds frustration. It leaves you feeling like a victim in your own life. But once you separate the world into two categories, what's mine to shape and what's not, you stop playing defense. You stop overreaching, and you start focusing your energy where it actually matters. There's a great metaphor that Epictetus used. You are like an archer. You train your aim, your strength, your posture. That's your part. But once you let go of the arrow, whether it hits the target, that's no longer yours. Let that land for a second. Your effort, yours. Your intention, yours. The result, not yours. So why do we spend so much time obsessing over the outcome when the process is the only thing that ever belonged to us? I'll tell you why. Because it's easier to focus on what's out there than to master what's in here. It's easier to try and fix someone else than to sit quietly with yourself. It's easier to fear the result than to trust the process. But Stoicism flips that. It says, number own what's yours, let go of what's not, and stay rooted in that discipline every single day. That's not passive, that's powerful. What are you holding on to right now that doesn't actually belong to you? A judgment? A grudge? A craving for control over something or someone you were never meant to carry? What if just for today you set it down? What if you gave yourself permission to focus only on your half of the equation? Because the moment you stop reaching outside yourself for peace, you'll start discovering it within. And that's where the magic begins. From here, you're no longer trying to avoid discomfort. You're learning to stand still in the middle of it. And the next part of this journey is where the real test begins. Let's talk about the difference between reacting and acting with intention. So you've started to practice this idea. You're beginning to shift your perception. You've stopped wasting energy on things you can't control. And now, you're in the arena, not of the world, but of your own emotions. This is where Stoicism gets real. Most of us live our lives on autopilot. Something happens. We react. An email comes in with the wrong tone. We shoot back. Someone cuts us off in traffic. We honk, curse, grip the wheel like it's personal. Someone challenges us. We defend, justify, explain. And all the while we think we're standing up for ourselves. But really, we're just being controlled. Because if anyone can trigger you at any time, then what they control isn't just your day, it's your state of mind. That's not strength, that's slavery. Epictetus understood this long before neuroscience confirmed it. If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. He's not blaming you. He's empowering you. He's saying, you have a choice. Maybe not in the first second, but in the second, you always do. And this is why act as if nothing bothers you isn't a performance. It's preparation. You're not trying to fake calm. You're trying to build calm, like a muscle. The more you act in alignment with the person you want to be, the more that becomes who you are. You're shaping your nervous system. You're rewiring your responses. You're proving to yourself that peace isn't something that happens to you. It's something you cultivate. Let's pause here and get practical. What does it look like to act without reacting? It looks like pausing before you respond. It looks like smiling when someone tries to bait you. It looks like keeping your tone level, even when the conversation gets heated. It looks like letting someone else be right when you realize the argument costs more than it's worth. It looks like breathing deeply in the middle of emotional turbulence and choosing to let the wave pass without getting pulled under. None of this is easy. It's not supposed to be. You're not reacting because you're weak. You're reacting because your brain thinks it's protecting you. But here's the twist. Your reactivity is often protecting your ego, not your peace. And the Stoic path, it's the opposite of ego. It's the path of inner security. I'll tell you something that changed me. I used to think being strong meant never backing down. But the more I practiced silence, the more I realized. Backing down is different from standing still. One is surrender, the other is stability. And when you start acting like the person you want to be, even before you feel like that person, something shifts. You stop needing to prove yourself. You stop chasing validation. You stop explaining your truth to people committed to misunderstanding you. You just live it. Quietly, confidently, consistently. That's when people start noticing. Not because you told them you're stronger, but because you didn't flinch when life tried to shake you. Let me leave you with a question. Who would you be if you stopped reacting to every minor inconvenience, every petty opinion, every passing judgment? What kind of clarity would you gain? What kind of presence would you radiate? And how different would your life look if you simply started showing up as the version of yourself you respect the most? Not when it's easy, not when it's quiet, but exactly when the storm hits. That's what Stoicism calls you to do. That's what acting as if nothing bothers you really means. Now from here, once you start mastering your reactions, you begin to uncover a deeper truth. The strongest people in the room are often the quietest. Let's talk about that next. Stillness doesn't mean you're passive. It doesn't mean you're cold. And it doesn't mean you're weak. Stillness means you've built something inside yourself that doesn't flinch when life starts shaking the table. You've built a core, a center. And while the world may swirl around you, you no longer spin with it. Here's a picture I like to keep in mind. Imagine a lake. When the wind blows, the surface ripples. But deep down, the water remains still. That's what Stoic stillness looks like. On the surface, maybe your face moves. Maybe your voice responds. Maybe you smile. But inside, you're calm. You've trained yourself to watch instead of react, to feel instead of flinch, to respond only when it serves something greater than your ego. Stillness is often misunderstood. People will call you cold. They'll say, you don't care. They'll think you're distant or detached. But the truth is, stillness doesn't come from apathy. It comes from depth. You've been through enough storms to know that yelling at the sky doesn't change the weather. So now, you simply bring an umbrella and keep walking. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. Let's go even deeper. There's a kind of power that only lives in restraint. You don't see it on social media. You don't hear about it in motivational speeches. But it's there, in the people who know how to sit in discomfort without trying to escape it. The ones who can hold tension without exploding, hold space without filling it with noise. You feel it when they walk into a room, not because they take up space, but because they don't need to. I remember a time I was in a conversation where I knew I was being disrespected. Not directly, not aggressively, but subtly, skillfully. The kind of jab that's meant to provoke you quietly. And everything in me wanted to defend myself, to say something clever, to let them know, I see what you're doing. But I didn't. Not because I was scared, but because I realized this moment is not worth disturbing my peace. I've worked too hard for this stillness. And so I said nothing. I nodded. I smiled. and I walked away with something more valuable than a one-liner comeback. Here's what I've learned. People confuse volume with power. But in truth, power lives in clarity, and clarity lives in stillness. Stillness lets you see clearly what's worth responding to, what's simply noise, and what can be released with a single breath. And the more you practice this, the more you realize, I don't need to prove I'm strong. I just need to stop giving my strength away. And yet, as you grow into this kind of quiet presence, you'll face something strange. The more calm you become, the more misunderstood you'll be. People won't get it. They'll assume you're avoiding, or hiding, or being passive-aggressive. But here's what the Stoics knew. Let them misunderstand you. Let it go. You're not here to perform your piece for anyone. You're here to protect it. Let's talk about that next. But here's the thing. The more grounded you become, the more misunderstood you'll be. Because most people don't know what to do with someone who doesn't react. They're used to loudness, to defensiveness, to drama. So when you don't play that game, they'll say, you're cold. You don't care. You're arrogant. You're weak. They'll try to bait you, poke you, draw you out of your stillness. And when you don't take it personally, when you simply breathe, smile, and walk on, they'll say you're avoiding, or hiding, or fake. But here's what Epictetus would say. If someone speaks badly of you, and it is true, correct yourself. If it is false, ignore it. Most people spend their lives trying to correct how others see them, defending themselves, explaining themselves, pleading their case in front of people who've already made up their minds. That's exhausting. And most of the time, it doesn't even work. Because the truth is, people see you through the lens of their own experience, their wounds, their fears, their insecurities. So when you stop reacting the way they expect, you break their script, and that makes them uncomfortable. Here's the hard truth. You don't owe anyone an explanation for who you are, especially if they're committed to misunderstanding you. You owe yourself alignment. You owe yourself integrity. You owe yourself the freedom to live without constantly translating your soul for people who aren't even listening. Let me be real with you. I used to waste so much energy trying to clear my name, trying to explain my silence, trying to make people see me the right way. But I've learned, the more energy you spend trying to manage other people's perceptions, the further you drift from your own truth. And the irony is, even if you explain yourself perfectly, some people will still believe the worst version of you. Not because it's true, but because it's easier for them. So now, I let them misunderstand me. Because I'm not here to perform my character. I'm here to live it. And maybe you're in that place right now, where you feel seen, but not understood. Where your growth has made some people uncomfortable. Where your silence is being misread as weakness. If so, let me remind you of this. You don't need to be loud to be real. You don't need to be aggressive to be strong. And you don't need to defend your truth to people who aren't ready to receive it. Live your peace. Don't perform it. That's Stoicism in action. So now that you've stopped reacting, now that you've stopped chasing outcomes, and you've stopped explaining yourself to the world, let's take this one step further. Let's talk about the one moment where silence becomes not just powerful, but essential, a moment you may not expect. Let's talk about the kind of silence you need when you're not trying to impress anyone, but simply trying to learn. You've learned to stop reacting. You've learned to stop explaining. Now there's one more kind of silence we need to talk about. Not the silence of strength, not the silence of boundaries, but the silence of humility. Be silent when you are learning. Because in a world that rewards fast opinions and instant takes, there's something deeply powerful about choosing to say, I don't know yet. We've all been there, in a conversation where someone throws out an idea you don't fully understand, where you feel a little exposed, a little unsure, a little small, and the ego hates that feeling, so it rushes in. It fills the silence with noise, opinions, guesses, performative insight, not because it's useful, but because it's afraid to look ignorant. But Stoicism teaches something better. It is impossible to learn that which you think you already know. Epictetus, in other words, you can't fill a cup that's already full. So what does it look like to be quiet when you're learning? It looks like listening without formulating your reply. It looks like reading a page twice, because you know you didn't really absorb it the first time. It looks like letting someone else speak longer without feeling the urge to match them. It looks like asking questions not to impress but to understand. It looks like saying, "Tell me more. I never thought of it that way." I want to sit with that for a while. These are not weak statements. They are the signs of someone becoming deep. I've sat with people who've accomplished more than I ever will. And you know what they all had in common? They never rushed to speak. They didn't interrupt. They didn't flex their knowledge. They made you feel heard. And they asked questions, not because they didn't know, but because they wanted to know more. That's the posture of a Stoic, not one who lectures, but one who learns. The danger today is that we mistake noise for knowledge, that we feel we must have a stance on every issue, a take, a response, a comment. But what if not having an opinion is a form of wisdom? What if saying, "I'm not sure yet," is more powerful than pretending to know? Because the truth is, you don't need to perform intelligence. You just need to stay open. And openness is quiet, receptive, still. So ask yourself, when was the last time you sat in silence? Not because you had nothing to say, but because you were truly learning. When was the last time you let someone's words sink in fully? Before you tried to respond? When was the last time you said, "Wow, I need to think about that"? Instead of rushing to add your own opinion, because sometimes the best way to grow is to shut up and listen, not to the loudest voice, but to the voice inside you that says, "This is new, let's absorb, let's go deeper." And that brings us to the final kind of silence, one that's not about learning or reacting or protecting your peace, but about something even more subtle. A silence that emerges when your own mind becomes unclear, when even your thoughts start to feel like noise. Let's go there next. So here we are. We've walked through 9 moments, 9 kinds of silence, 9 different forms of strength. And maybe by now, you've realized that being unbothered doesn't mean you're disconnected. It means you're in control, not of the world, but of yourself. Because life isn't about avoiding the noise. It's about learning how to stay still in the middle of it. That's the practice. That's Stoicism. That's what Epictetus lived. And it's what you and I, together, are learning to live. So if this episode stirred something in you, if even one of these silences felt familiar, or reminded you of a part of yourself you've been trying to reclaim, don't let it fade. Pause here. Sit with it. Write something down. Carry it into tomorrow. And when life comes at you sideways again, because it will, ask yourself, is this worth my reaction? Is this mine to carry? Or can I just breathe, smile, and let it pass? That's where your power lives, in the pause, in the space, in the stillness. If this message meant something to you, let me know. Leave a comment. Share your own practice of stillness, silence, and self-control. What moment this week did you choose not to react? What did it feel like? And if you want more like this, subscribe to the channel. We're building something here. A space for quiet thinkers, for ancient wisdom in a noisy world, for people who are tired of reacting and ready to live with depth. Until next time, stay calm, stay present, and remember, you don't have to say much to live powerfully.